Hello! This week's video on Muse Egyptology is about the very basics on how to read ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs, teaching you how to read pharaohs' names, specifically the pharaoh's birth name, the one that they are commonly known by nowadays, and back in ancient Egypt like Amenhotep or Ramesses, so that you can go to a museum or even go to Egypt and be able to read the ancient Egyptian pharaohs' cartouches and say, this monument belonged to this particular king, or this false door or this stela was built or carved during the reign of whichever king, which is a really satisfying thing to be able to do when you're in a museum or visiting Egypt, or even when you're flicking through a book and you see a cartouche in a picture. I love the idea of teaching you some of the basics of ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs on this channel, but I will not be doing a whole course on how to read Egyptian hieroglyphs. It's been a very long time since I studied it at university, and I unfortunately have not continued it since. But reading Egyptian cartouches is one of the fairly straightforward things, and it's a really good thing to be able to introduce you to start you off on either just impressing your friends about your knowledge of ancient Egypt, or a journey to learning more and more about ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs. I hope to do some more videos on this channel, but just for today, let's get started on how to read kings' names in cartouches. We are going to be looking at some cartouches in a few minutes, but first I just wanted to show you the resources that I've made for this video. This is a list of one consonant signs in ancient Egyptian. You've probably seen this sort of thing before. It's commonly on items that are sold in gift shops with some sort of interest in ancient Egypt, so like museum gift shops. I've got it on a ruler. You can find it on other things, I guess, like canvas bags or tea towels or the front of a notebook or something like that. So this is the basis for learning how to read hieroglyphs, because these are common signs and it has their phonetic value here with an explanation for some of them of how to pronounce them. And this middle column here is the transliteration symbol. You don't have to worry about that today. I just wanted to introduce that to you. This is the pronunciation, which is reflected in the transliteration, for those who know what that means and what that means. But this is how we translate them. One thing I am going to say is what I am saying today, how to pronounce these names, is not going to be accurate. If you get inside your time machine and go back to ancient Egypt and try to refer to the name of the king, we're probably saying it wrong, because we don't actually know what went in between these hieroglyphs. So I'll demonstrate that in a minute. But these are the one consonant signs. Then we have just a few two consonant signs. Literally, they have two consonants, and then we have the three consonant signs, and these are going to be, some of these are going to be in the cartouches that we're going to be looking at, and others are in cartouches that we aren't going to be looking at today, but that are famous ones. So Ankh is in Tutankhamun, Usa is in Sen Usret or Sen Wasret, depends on how you pronounce that. So Useret, Sen Useret. Nefer in Nefertiti and Nefertari. And down here we have got Sa-Ra and Nezu-Biti, which are the titles in front of the cartouches in the ancient Egyptian royal titulary. So the kings of ancient Egypt had 5 names. In the earlier periods, so during the early dynastic period and parts of the Old Kingdom, they did not have all of these names. But when we're talking about the Middle Kingdom, the New Kingdom, the kings used 5 names and they had different functions. But today we're primarily looking at the Sa-Ra name. So you would have the duck and then the sun, duck meant, like Sa, it meant son, as in son of father. And Ra is the god Ra. So it means son of Ra, as in the king is the son of Ra. It's part of ancient Egyptian kingship ideology and religion. And this is the king's birth name, or what follows in the Cartouche is the king's birth name. This was the name that when baby Prince was born, he was given this name, that as a baby and a toddler and a child and a young adult, he would have been referred by. And when he became king, he then adopted 4 more names. One of those names was the Nezubiti name, and this was his unique throne name. This is the name that he took when he acceded the throne. And this Sa-Ra name is the primary name by which we know the kings. The Nezubiti name is a secondary name that we are going to look at in a few minutes to clarify if a name is particularly common in ancient Egyptian kings like Amenhotep or Ramesses. You might need to look at the Nezubiti name to work out which king we are looking at. So these documents that I have written here, I have used the JSesh software to put the hieroglyphs onto the page, including in the cartouches, and I have used the TR Lit transliteration font to do the transliteration here. The hieroglyphs and their phonetic values I have got from the excellent book How to Read Egyptian Hieroglyphs by Mark Collier and Bill Manley, which was the book that we used in our first term of university to learn to read ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs. And we were taught by Mark Collier. So, of course, he wanted to use his own book, and it is an excellent book. I would recommend it for anybody wanting to learn ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs, grammar, how to read texts. It's not a very advanced book, but that's exactly what you need as a beginner. But it does give you a really good foundation for being able to then advance your studies to read more complicated and more in-depth texts. So we are going to be referring back to this in the lesson today, but I'm going to flick on over to this document I have made up, and we've got some card on top to cover up the rest of them because we're going to go one at a time. We've got our cartouches and we've got our Sa-Ra. So that's here again. Sa-Ra, son of Ra. Cartouche. That means that this is the Pharaoh's birth name. And we are looking at these two specifically, these two kings from the 6th dynasty, because their names are nice and easy to translate or read. On our one consonant sign list, we will find these symbols here and these symbols here. So this is a piece of bread, this semicircle. And if we look at the sign list, we'll find it here, and it's a T. So you've got the T, followed by another T, followed by this, which is a reed. We look down here, we find it here, and it's an I or an E or an E sound. So it's TTI. How do you say TTI as a name? This has 2 consonants in between. There's nothing. So we naturally want to fill it with some sort of sound that connects those two. And so what Egyptologists do is they fill it in between with a S sound. And this tends to be how we pronounce practically everything in ancient Egyptian that doesn't obviously have a vowel in between. So we'll pronounce this Teti, because we're putting the eh sound in between the 2 T's there. Teti, and he was a 6th dynasty pharaoh. So this is his cartouche. Teti, Sa-Ra, Teti. Same here. Sa-Ra, rectangle, rectangle, read, read. The rectangle is P. So again, we've got P, and then another P, and then a reed and a reed. And these 2 reeds together, we've got one here, that's an I sound, or, sorry, it's an E or an E sound. It's a letter I in the transliteration. It's actually an I with a curly dot over the top. But 2 together make a Y sound. So this king, P-P-Y, is Pepi, another 6th dynasty king. So King Teti and King Pepi. Those are really simple ones because they're one consonant sign cartouches. We are going to move on to some where there's a mixture of 1 consonant signs, 2 consonant signs and 3 consonant signs. Don't worry, it's not complicated. I've made sure I've picked the easy ones. This is an 18th dynasty cartouche. So we've got Sa, Ra and cartouche again. And the first sign is that I again, not that E sound. And then we've got this sort of rectangle with some lines coming off the top. And we're going to look at the 2 and 3 consonant signs. And we find it in the first one here, men. So that's Imen. Now, we don't pronounce that Imen. We actually pronounce that Amen. Amen, the God. Amen. Amen, Amun. Depends on how we use that sound in the word that we're referring to. Because usually if we're talking about the God, we say Amun. But in names, it's sometimes Amen. And then we've got this long sign with this thing sitting on the top. That's Hotep or Hetep. So this is a funny one because this is one of the ones where we would normally put E's in between the letters. H-T-P, Hetep, but we actually pronounce it Hotep. Don't ask me why. Egyptology has developed over a couple of 100 years, and before that we were influenced by the ancient Greeks. So the pronunciations, as I said, are not similar to what the ancient Egyptians would have recognised. But as long as we recognise it by these transliterations and the way we read it, we all get on. So we've got Amen, Hetep, Amenhotep. There were 4 kings in the 18th dynasty called Amenhotep. The 4th one actually changed his name to Akhenaten, but he did use the name Amenhotep very early on in his reign. So the next name that we're going to look at is this one. I've not bothered to put the Sa Ra on after this. You get the point. You're looking for Sa Ra to be able to find the cartouche that applies to a king that you will have heard of. This one, we've got this front part of lion here, and that's heart. H, glottal stop sound, T, or hat, heart or hat. We've got T. Now, this is a common thing in ancient Egypt. This T is actually part of this heart or hat sound. It's not an extra T, and this is one of the complicated things about reading hieroglyphs. But if you're reading a cartouche, you don't need to worry about it too much because, trust me, you're not getting examined on it. And once you figure out the name of the person, you can forgive that there's an extra letter in there. So it's hat. This sign here is Shepes. And this letter here is T. And these 3 lines mean plural. And the plural is pronounced U. W, basically, U. So if we put this together, hat, Shepes ut. Because, confusingly, even if the W comes before the T tends to be positioned before the W. I know we're getting into complicated things here, but it will make sense in a second, because this is hat, shep, suit. Hatshepsut. So we've learnt a couple of things in this. Ignore that T. If there's already a T there, it might belong to that word. She's not hat et shepesut, she's hat shepsut. So that's why I say you'll learn to forgive it. And that the T comes before the W. Now the meaning of this name is foremost of the noble ladies. So Hut means foremost, and this symbol here is the symbol for noble ladies, or noble lady, one of them. And this plural means this becomes more than one. And the T refers to this being a female figure. This could be a male figure if it didn't have the T, because T is a feminine ending. Like in French, you get E as a feminine ending. T is a feminine ending. So this means foremost of the noble ladies. Because when Hatshepsut was born, she was not born to be the pharaoh. She was born as the daughter of the king, and she was the foremost of the noble ladies, as opposed to a woman who was destined to be regent, but then be in a co-regency with her stepson/nephew. I'll do a video on that in the future. Another cartouche for Hatshepsut. So we see here 4 parts of lion, T, noble women, plural, female. But this cartouche shows us several different things than we've got here. So this is actually an extended version of her name. So her full name, her full birth name, was United with our moon, foremost of the noble ladies. So that's what we've got here. United and our moon. So she was united with our moon, foremost of the noble ladies. That was her full name. So sometimes we see inside a cartouche an extended version of the king's names. Ramesses II does this quite a lot. The other thing we've got is that now we are looking at a top-down cartouche. So far, I've used left to right, horizontal cartouches. So the way that we read ancient Egyptian is we go towards the faces. So we're going towards the face of the lion, towards the face of the noble lady. Here it wouldn't be so obvious because there's no faces, but the reed is the right way round. So we are going towards the reed and we are going towards the duck. Actually, with the cartouche, it's quite easy to know which way round it is because the rounded part is either the top or the front. The line is the bottom or the end. So here we are going top down, and in ancient Egyptian, they never went bottom up. They never read from the bottom to the top. So they always wrote left to right, right to left, or top to bottom. And in this cartouche, we have got a top to bottom and a right to left. So I just wanted to show you that. I actually forgot to talk about this one. It's the full name, but it's just written left to right. I was actually going to do that first, so I forgot and I did this. So that's all the cartouches of the Sa-Ra names that we're going to look at today. But I have got this quick little document here that I've made. We're going to look again at Amenhotep. As I said, there were 4 Amenhoteps in ancient Egypt. So if you go to a museum or wherever and you're going, I can read that. That says Amenhotep. How do you know which Amenhotep it is? And the way to do that is by looking at their Nezubiti name, the name that we talked about at the beginning, their throne name that the pharaoh takes on at the accession of the throne. This is the throne name of Amenhotep I, Amenhotep II, and Amenhotep III. You don't have to read these. If you want to go to a museum and just read, this is Amenhotep's, this belonged to Amenhotep or was made by some sort of rich person during the reign of Amenhotep, then Amenhotep is enough. If you want some clarification, read the museum label. It will always tell you which reign it came from. Or if you're lucky enough to go to Egypt and to tour a temple or a tomb and you want to know which reign it belonged to, there will be someone there that you can ask or a sign that will say. But I just wanted to clarify that each throne name was unique. So this is Neb-Matre, Aa-Keperure, and Josakare. I can read that because I've studied hieroglyphs for years. Don't worry if you can't. If you want to work your way through learning hieroglyphs, grab a book. Grab Bill Manley's new book, or the How to Read Egyptian Hieroglyphs book that I said at the beginning, which was also co-written by Bill Manley and Mark Collier, or one of the other books. I've seen courses being advertised online, but it is a really cool thing to learn. It's not easy, but it's cool, and it's one of those things that it's like a puzzle. It's like, oh, I love a good cryptic crossword or a really hard Sudoku or something, but I find them easy now and they're not difficult for me anymore. Learn hieroglyphs, because there will always be something that you can learn that will surprise you. It is brilliant to learn. I hope that was interesting for you. I hope it gave you either a little bit of education to be able to read ancient pharaohs' names yourself, or hopefully the inspiration to learn to read hieroglyphs yourself. I'm not going to do a course on this channel, but I will do the odd video to show you interesting things about the ancient Egyptian language or little lessons here and there. If you want to learn more about ancient kings' names, I highly recommend the website pharaoh.se. So that's pharaoh. S for sugar, E for echo. It's a great website with many variants of different kings' names. And it also talks about king lists and has the translations of names and the sources for where these transliterations and translations come from. It's a great resource. It's a fun website to go through if you are a little bit geeky about ancient Egyptian names. And that's one of the resources I used. Thank you for watching. I'll see you soon. Subscribe if you like. Okay, bye.